Hi, this is Mike with of A Plus Tutoring, and I thought I would share a few tips here of what I've tried here in Cincinnati to help my students get to the top 1%. So these are steps really as you're getting into your ACT test prep that you should know about. So, ACT test prep is many times something considered by many students to be merely a few moments in school when they're given some problems by maybe a math or English teacher and other lessons. But if you really think about it, the ramifications of preparing for or not preparing for the test are huge. So we're going over some 5 huge mistakes students make when they get ready for their ACT and how we can avoid these things in the first place. So first, don't think that the ACT is the be-all and end-all of all your college prep has. Remember that the ACT prep is not the only preparation you should be making when you're getting ready for college admissions. Just because your sibling did well in the ACT doesn't mean that you'll do well. Or even if you like the format of the ACT the first time you took it, doesn't really mean it's your best test. The fact is that almost all schools do accept scores for the SAT just like the ACT. So give yourself a chance on both tests before you decide which to test for. The second is that these students may not make enough time to prepare for the ACT, so don't delay getting into the habit of actually repeating the test-taking techniques that you've developed for Test A. So the ACT is based on your academic work on school, that's true, but it's also based on critical thinking skills. So you're being asked to know all the basics of your standard curriculum in a college prep school, but you're also needing to know critical thinking skills to navigate on the test. So you'll see that about 15 to 90% of the test is going to be very content oriented toward what you learn in school, but your job is to review this material so you can deal with the critical thinking component as well. So you'll have to deal with the structure of the test. This taps into those critical thinking techniques and systematic thinking. So the ACT can be a maze, and a maze that changes with each administration. So get used to the small amount of time you are given for each question, and the dots you have to connect on test day to get that final answer. So I myself had a student from St. Ursula who got both sick and injured at 2 different times, and it took months for her to recover from during our ACT prep. So we did still have enough time to prepare for the test, and she actually was able to get a 34 despite her obstacles, but her chances of success would have been greatly diminished if we had waited for her to prepare her senior year. So don't wait until late in your senior year to get ready. It's not worth the risk. You should prepare for the ACT right now. Now, also don't be presumptuous thinking you already know what you need to know to be successful on test day. Just because the ACT is said to be based on your academic work in school doesn't mean you should prep very seriously. If colleges really thought that your courses were adequate for the ACT, they really wouldn't require the ACT in the first place. The fact is that the questions you're asked on testing are different, if not more difficult from what you're given in school. One should also remember that students are rarely made to focus on their tests for what can amount to almost 4 hours at a time. So prepare for the ACT so you can encompass not only the 4 years of school that you've had with math and science, also know the college freshman grammar work because that's the essence of the English part of the test. Now, also don't assume just because you know the basic material, you're going to do well. So, in other words, don't underestimate the critical thinking component of the test. The science test has about 15% of its questions that are directed toward more content, basic facts that you learned in school. But even if you remember those basic facts, doesn't mean that you'll actually know how to relate that materially to the graphs and charts that you see that can be rather complex and are rarely the target of what you've actually studied. So give yourself a chance at your best score by getting used to the different situations that are possible on the ACT. Prep knowing that critical thinking and navigating the questions gracefully is an essential part of what you do need to know for test day. Also, don't think that classroom prep for the ACT will necessarily get the job done. Many times in life, we actually need a coach who will show us the way. So if you think about it, Even in olden days when monks were building cathedrals or workers were crafting the Great Pyramids, the architects of the day seemed always to have a master to personally learn from. So for a dedicated student who is not shy about asking help, getting a tutor is often a wise decision when starting that ACT prep. So many students are making mistakes when they set out on their ACT test prep. So they might take for granted that the ACT is nothing very new from what they've already learned in school. We see this isn't true. Consider learning from a master with a track record of success. Prepare early and consider that the SAT might actually be the test for you at the end of the day. Now, in this way, you will prep smart for the ACT and give yourself the maximum chance of success. This is Michael DeSalvo of A+ Tutoring. These were the top 1% tips for the ACT. You can reach me and learn more about my blog at the address below, which is actually my main site. I'm here at 513-939-9033. Thanks for spending some time with me today. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. Again, my number is 513-939-9033, and hope you have a great day.